How you doing today? Cold enough for you? Eh? Well, today I want to tell you a story about a conflict I had with a staff member at a previous congregation. This was a conflict around spirituality and theology, which spilled off into how I did my ministry and this person did their ministry, and also how my preaching came across. She would always, what's the term I'm looking for? Criticize me about how I was not showing people who God was well enough. I wasn't pointing to God there. That's God's activity right there. You can't deny it. And I would always come back and say, well, how do you know that's God's activity? How do you know that it's just not something that's happening? And she'd always point to something positive as God's activity. But if I pointed to a negative something of God's activity, she would just... And she had a little bit of congregational support of this as well. I had an email after a transfiguration sermon. You know the story we'll hear on Sunday, where Peter, James, and John go up the mountain with Jesus. Jesus starts to glow dazzling white. Moses and Elijah show up. They have a conversation. The cloud lifts. Boom. And what I was focusing on for that sermon was the line, "And they were left all alone." And so I preached a sermon on feeling like alone or away from God. Because to be honest, that's often how I experience God. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but just an experiential way. And I know a lot of other people do as well. And the feedback I got from this one person in the congregation and from my staff member was, you cannot tell people that they were alone from God. You have to tell people that God is very much a part of their life. And I'm like, well, what if they don't feel God? What if they don't sense God? He says, well, that's on them. They have to work hard to maintain that relationship with God. And I'm like, well, where's God's responsibility in this? And so this conflict would fester. And then, here's my plug for Lent. We did this exercise. You probably can't read it, it's backward. It's discover your spiritual type. And this gave language to the conflict. And I always knew these spiritual categories as I learned them in seminary. The cataphatic side of the spiritual spectrum and the apophatic side of the spiritual spectrum, and there is everything in between. No one person experiences God the same as another person because all human beings are alike, and we're all created in God's image. However, the polarity or the spectrum on the one side, the cataphatic side, means that you feel God, you sense God, you see God everywhere. There's nowhere that you can't see God. The other side, the apophatic side, which I'm closer to the apophatic side, is that you don't sense God directly. You sense God in mystery, in ritual, in narrative. Some have even described it as you sense God in absence. And what this means is, have you ever had like a great party at your house? Or you had someone visit your house, you had this great conversation and just enjoyed their company so much, and then they left, and you could feel their presence lingering there by their absence. And that's how many people report to understand it or experience God. And what this does, this study does, is it helps us to locate ourselves spiritually, to put language to what we are experiencing, how we are experiencing God. Because sometimes people on the apophatic side feel really guilty and badly about themselves. It's as if they feel like they've done something wrong to get God angry at them, so they don't feel God as directly as they say other people do. And the cataphatic side gets often really wrapped up in the experience of God. They forget that there are other ways of how people can experience God. So during the Wednesdays of Lent, starting on the 24th, you don't have to buy the book. I'll be providing some of the material for you. But if you want to buy the book, that's great too. But we will be journeying together through this process of understanding ourselves spiritually in a much more honest way, so we can understand each other in a much more honest and authentic way. Because there is a multitude of spiritualities out there. And I look forward to sharing and seeing what yours might be. So if you have I'll have a sign-up sheet pretty soon. And oh yeah, we will be partnering with our friends at St. Martin's. Unfortunately, Reverend Natasha won't be joining us as she's leaving the parish at the end of this month. So I'm disappointed by that. I enjoyed working with her, and I am looking forward to our friends at St. Martin's being part of this conversation. Thanks. Bye-bye.